Hello, my friends. Thank you very much for pressing play because I've got a great North Carolina show for you today. First, I'm going to be talking with Moe Davis in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, how he's dealing in Asheville, North Carolina, where he lives with his wife. Then I've got Kate Barr, who is running for North Carolina Senate, but she can't win. KateBarrCan'tWin.com is her website because her district is so gerrymandered, she doesn't have a chance. Kate Barr is really impressive. Have a great conversation with her. And then our own Frances Christian also lives in Asheville. She joined us for the debate watch party on Thursday night and talked to us about her experience in the hurricane and the aftermath of it. So, Moe Davis, Kate Barr, and France Pants all join me on today's show. Plus, I've got your headlines and your news clips. My conversation with Moe begins at 25 minutes. But right now, I've got your headlines and clips. Oh, and let me just start with this email from our good friend Carlo up there in Canada, who says, Pete, I didn't listen to any of the podcasts when I was in San Francisco for 18 days. I typically listen to the car while in the car or mowing the lawn or using the snowblower, so none of these were happening while I was away. So I had a lot of catching up to do. I was very pleased but not surprised to see that the interviews were still relevant and well worth the time, even 3 or 4 weeks later. And on that same note, I'm very happy that you say when the interview starts, because even though I like the news and soundbite section, I always skip it if it's more than 2 days old. Well, I love that. There's something for everybody, and Carlo points that out right now. I try as much as I can to be relevant with our guests, especially those who are authors that have written extremely important and impactful books about the issues that matter the most to us. Definitely did that this week with Ryan Hampton on the opioid epidemic and Melinda Blau on aging and why having friends matters. Both of those were great. Go back and listen to them if you didn't hear them. Got great feedback from them. But now let's get to those headlines. Lots of news from yesterday. The presidential election, 32 days away, everybody. But the big headline continues to be the aftermath of Hurricane Helene here in the U.S. Since it made landfall in Florida a week ago, 204 lost souls. Wow. More than half the deaths were in North Carolina, where entire communities were destroyed by several feet of fast-moving water. Hundreds are still missing. Officials reported difficulties in identifying some of the dead. Rescuers continue to search for survivors from the storm that tore across the U.S. southeast. It was also the deadliest mainland storm since Katrina in 2005. Nearly 1 million homes still without power a week after Helene made landfall. The rising death toll comes as President Joe Biden continues his 2-day tour of the area, visiting Florida and Georgia on Thursday. Kamala Harris on her way there as well. More on that in my conversations with Moe Davis and Frances. Let's now go to the Middle East, where reports are Israel struck central Beirut overnight, expanded its evacuation orders north of a UN buffer zone. At least 9 people were killed in Israel's deepest attack into the Lebanese capital yet. 2 Lebanese army soldiers were killed yesterday as the country entered the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, firing for the first time at Israeli soldiers. Yeesh. On edge about that all the time, but moving on to another thing to be concerned about, the ongoing port strike. As the East and Gulf Coast port strike enters its 3rd day with no signs of talks restarting, some consumers are starting to worry about potential shortages of groceries and other basics. But so far, experts say only a fraction of perishable goods are likely to see an impact in the short term. These include fresh fruit, especially bananas, and some alcoholic beverages and seafood, according to the American Farm Bureau Federation, which represents the agriculture industry. Let me know where you're seeing shortages if you are. News on student loan debt relief. President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness program can proceed after a judge Wednesday let a temporary restraining order in the plan expire. It's a minor victory for Biden administration just weeks ahead of the presidential election. The lawsuit was brought in September by 7 Republican-led states, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Missouri, North Dakota, and Ohio, against Biden and Americans who had been these huge student loans blow up on them. And the Education Secretary, Miguel Cardona, that's who the lawsuit was against. But it's, I think, really against Americans, as we talked about with Tom Hartman yesterday's show. Oh, that was a book as well, by the way. Don't want to miss that one. That's very evergreen. So the Vice President Kamala Harris was campaigning last night, along with Liz Cheney in Wisconsin. Pretty big deal. The most prominent Republican to cross party lines and endorsed her. They held an event together in Ripon, Wisconsin, the symbolic birthplace of the Republican Party. I've got clips for you, but Liz Cheney agreed with Kamala Harris, on very little politically aside from their distaste for Donald Trump. Her appearance with Kamala Harris in a battleground state attempt to appeal to Republican and independent voters who are repelled by Donald Trump, who remains focused on Springfield, Ohio. Yesterday, he threatened to revoke the legal status of Haitian migrants in the U.S. and deport them, once again falsely suggesting that they're endangering the majority white city of Springfield, Ohio. And this news, the New York Times obtained photographs of my congressman, Republican Mike Lawler, wearing blackface while dressed as Michael Jackson for a Halloween party back in 2006. Will it hurt him? I sure hope so. Kevin McCarthy, for his part, the former Republican Speaker of the House, was on a radio show yesterday. When asked if he'd made amends with Matt Gaetz, he said, quote, "I don't hang around with pedophiles." See if I can get the audio for you on that. Pro-Trump former Colorado election official, a woman named Tina Peters, well, guess what? She was sentenced to 9 years in jail yesterday for her role in helping access Mesa County, Arizona's election system as part of a pro-Trump plot to alter the 2020 election outcome. She's going to jail for that for 9 years. And this huge story yesterday, the disgraced former president and the former first lady, who clearly hates her husband, Melania Trump, delivered a humiliating repudiation of the disgraced former president, stated anti-abortion stance in a stunning new video that's a political gift to Vice President Kamala Harris. And I'll play that for you. Of course, Trump's been trying to walk a line, bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade and trying to reassure voters that he won't sign a national abortion ban. He will, while refusing to actually say that he would veto one. He's also come out against Florida's 6-week ban. Then within a day, he voted to uphold it. So nothing he says ever matters. All right, moving on. We've got a broken confirmation process in the Senate. The diplomat slated to be the next U.S. ambassador to Libya has withdrawn her name from the process as the Senate has been slow walking the nomination process. Jennifer Gavito is her name. She was nominated by President Joe Biden all the way back in January, but Republicans on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee have stalled discussing the appointments of Gavita and 25 other career diplomats because why not hurt America? And this big story from yesterday. 3 former police officers in Memphis were convicted in the 2023 fatal beating of Tyree Nichols, but were acquitted of the harshest charges they faced for death that sparked national interest and calls for broad changes in policing. Jurors deliberated for about 6 hours before coming back with a mixed verdict for the 3 police officers. All of them were convicted of witness tampering related to the cover-up of the beating, but 2 were acquitted of civil rights charges. 1 was acquitted of violating Nichols' civil rights causing death, but convicted of a lesser charge of violating his civil rights causing bodily injury. The court remained silent as the verdicts were read. The judge ordered the officers to be taken into custody, planned to hold a hearing Monday to hear from the defense lawyers about releasing them pending sentencing. The witness tampering charges carry a possible sentence of up 20 years in prison. The civil rights charges against Tyree Nichols carries up to 10 years in prison. This is justice. It's some justice. There is no justice for this kind of thing, but it is some justice. And I just want to make sure I read that one. Finally, the EU is expected to raise tariffs on Chinese electric cars as much as 45%. And 2 weight loss drugs, Mounjaro and Zepbound, are no longer in shortage, according to the FDA. Ladies and gentlemen, those are your headlines from yesterday. Now let's get to the audio clips I've gathered for you. Let's start with Liz Cheney introducing Kamala Harris in Wisconsin, which is something that I thought we'd never hear, but obviously this is a big, important deal. Liz Cheney gave a really important speech before she introduced the vice president, and I just want to give you the ending, last couple of minutes of that from yesterday at a very, very highly energized and highly anticipated and hopefully very impactful rally in Ripon, Wisconsin.
In this election, a broad coalition has come together to support Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, we may disagree on some things, but we are bound together by the one thing that matters to us as Americans more than any other, and that's our duty to our Constitution and our belief in the miracle and the blessing of this incredible nation. We have a shared commitment as Americans to ensuring that future generations live in a nation where power is transferred peacefully, where our leaders are men and women of good faith, and where our public servants set aside partisan battles to do what's right for this country. So today I ask all of you here and everyone listening across this great country to join us. I ask you to meet this moment. I ask you to stand in truth, to reject the depraved cruelty of Donald Trump. And I ask you instead to help us elect Kamala Harris for president. I know that President Harris will be able to unite this nation. I know that she will be a president who will defend the rule of law. And I know that she will be a president who can inspire all of our children, and if I might say so, especially our little girls. To do great things. So help us right the ship of our democracy so that history will say of us, when our time of testing came, we did our duty and we prevailed because we loved our country more.
Liz Cheney in Wisconsin yesterday. And you know what? How about a little bit more? Just the very final 45 seconds as she introduces Kamala Harris. You got to hear it. I can't believe my ears.
And now it is my great honor to introduce you to our Vice President and the next President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
All right. So then Liz Cheney walks to the back of the stage, greets Kamala Harris. Beyonce comes on, and then I skip ahead to when Kamala starts speaking. But just because I thought this was great, that the audience there started chanting, "Thank you, Liz."
Can we hear it for Liz Cheney?
Yeah, there you go. Kamala Harris yesterday in Wisconsin. Now, the former First Lady making news yesterday. I can't believe Melania Trump was the First Lady. I promise you she wouldn't be. I make no such promises anymore. But she's out with a new book, and she's trying to get promotion and publicity out of it. And so a weird thing happened that apparently she's demanding money for interviews with news agencies. You can't do that, and news agencies would be wildly unethical to ever pay her. But here is CNN reporting that Melania Trump and her people wanted them to pay her $250,000. What?
CNN has tried to interview the former First Lady ahead of the release of her memoir, but her publisher responded with an unusual demand to CNN, a $250,000 price tag. CNN's Hadass Gold and I broke the story together today. Hadass, good to see you. So help our viewers understand from a media perspective how unusual a demand such as this is with such an incredibly high price tag nonetheless.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Most legitimate news organizations would never pay a public figure, especially the spouse of the Republican candidate for president, for an interview. Full stop. They just would not do that. Most news organizations have rules against any sort of payment to political organizations or to a candidate. So they would never pay for an interview with the spouse of the Republican candidate for president. And CNN has not and will not pay for such an interview. Now, in the past, media organizations have paid, especially when it comes to licensing photos or trying to get interviews with people who are involved in things like scandals or murders or the like. But paying for something related to politics, that in particular crosses essentially all of the media ethical boundaries. Now, a former First Lady being paid for a speaking engagement or for a book advance, that is not necessarily unusual. But Melania Trump is not just the former First Lady. She is also the spouse of the Republican candidate for president. So it is very unusual also that her team would send such a request and such a high amount for requests to a news organization. And let's be clear. Now, the publisher now says, after we reached out to them, that this was a miscommunication. But it's very clear in the conversations with CNN and in the contract that we've seen that they knew who they were dealing with, because the contract very clearly lays out that it's CNN that the contract is with and that it is for an interview. And I would like to stress there were several backs and forths between the publishers team and CNN before this contract was even sent. So
the other big news yesterday, I mean, that's just insane. But the other big news that Melania Trump made yesterday is that she put out a video, again, promoting her book, that said that she's fully in support of abortion and abortion rights. And clearly, this is a mutual interest for Trump. And on first glance, it's like, oh, that's not going to help him. But he is trying to be more moderate on the issue of abortion. Some people think Melania Trump just endorsed Kamala Harris. I saw a lot of that on Twitter, but she's a disgraceful person for so many reasons. But her coming out as a purported champion of abortion rights is, I think, an obvious political ploy to moderate Trump's image on the issue. Here it is.
Individual freedom is a fundamental principle that I safeguard. Without a doubt, there is no room for compromise when it comes to this essential right that all women possess from birth. Individual freedom. What does my body, my choice really mean?
All right. Thank you, Melania, whatever. And by the way, here is the disgraced former president being asked about his wife's support for abortion rights. And this is more evidence that, you know, it's him trying to moderate on the issue, which is hurting him so much. Trigger alert. It's only about 20 seconds.
What's your reaction to Melania's memoir about championing abortion rights and reproductive freedom? When you read it, what were your thoughts?
We spoke about it, and I said, you have to write what you believe. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You have to write what you believe. She's very beloved. People love our former First Lady, I can tell you that. But I said, you have to stick with your heart. I've said that to everybody. You have to go with your heart. There are some people that are very, very far right on the issue, meaning without exceptions. And then there are other people that view it a little bit differently than that.
So there you have it. That's the play. And we're ready for it. And no one, I hopefully, is at all moved or convinced by that at all. And now here is Kevin McCarthy on a very popular podcast. I forget the name of this asshole and his show. He's a terrible guy, but Kevin McCarthy was on. It's a very, very popular show. Patrick bet something. I don't know, nor do I care, except for how much I love Kevin McCarthy going after Matt Gaetz. Kevin McCarthy, a terrible person, a hollow barrel himself, but still maybe a little better than Matt Gaetz in that he hasn't done these horrible things to young women that Gaetz is allegedly accused of doing.
Because you've had 3 or 4 more since then.
And by the way, how is the relationship now? Because I know I saw you guys at the RNC where he walked up to you while you're talking to somebody. You wouldn't be on the stage. You would be booed or something like that.
Yeah.
Are you guys better now or still there's no?
No, I don't hang around with pedophiles. I'm sorry. And I don't think it. Look, these young women deserve justice. Can you imagine you're a member of Congress. You pay by Venmo to have sex with women. This woman is a junior in high school. You supply them with drugs. There's all these other reportings where he leaves a Trump event, uses his campaign money to rent a hotel, and lines out the cocaine for the other women that he paid inside the hotel room. Maybe they were over the age of 18. And I understand he doesn't want that to come public, but I'm not going to influence an ethics committee to try to take over to protect him.
All right, there you go. How about it? Kevin McCarthy yesterday just crushing Matt Gaetz, calling him a pedophile. That's a pretty bad thing to call a person, but he went for it. All right, and now here is one of the comedian/journalists, I think it's fair to say, Jason Selvig. I love these guys. The Good Liars caught up somehow with J.D. Vance yesterday and asked him the most important question: did Donald Trump win the 2020 election? And J.D. Vance says yes, twice, and that's a big story from yesterday. Here it is. You can hear it, I think.
Who won the 2020 election? We're going to go to town hall. Could you just answer, did Donald Trump win, yes or no?
Yes.
He did win?
Yep.
So will you concede? Will you concede? If your opponent gets more votes, will you concede?
I really feel bad for you, man.
I just want to know, if your opponent gets more votes, will you concede?
And here's the other part of the duo of the Good Liars, catching up with a Trump supporter out in front of the rally in North Carolina the other day. I believe this is where it was. This is fun.
If Kamala Harris wins, you're saying people are going to come and live in your home?
I think so.
That people are going to come live in your home, for example, that people would come and live in your house?
Yeah, because you have all these immigrants.
They're just going to come start living in your house?
I don't know how they do that because they already do it in other states, like in New York.
And then the people have to leave?
No, people still stay there if they want.
So it's their house. Immigrants come and live, and then they all live together after that?
I guess so. I don't know how it works. I'm not sure because she hasn't said anything.
Are you going to be voting for Mark Robinson?
Yes.
Because he might be a good candidate for you.
Yeah.
And one more maddening clip I've got to play. This is Jason Selvig, again, of The Good Liars, talking to another Trump supporter about teaching the Bible in school. I think it's important to know what a lot of these folks actually believe.
Do you think the Bible should be taught in schools?
Yes, that's how it originally began.
You think the Bible should be taught in public schools in the United States of America?
We should have it should be like Lee Vance was speaking about choice for schooling.
So in public schools, they should teach the Bible as history, but in what class? In history, science, where?
I think putting the 10 Commandments out and giving people morals and values.
Do you think that the Bible should be taught as like a history book in schools, like as history, Noah's flood, the earth beginning maybe several thousand years ago? Do you think that should be in history and science?
Yes. Well, yeah.
So like the Bible is a history book and taught to children.
It tells our history, correct, yes.
So do you think there should be books that are banned in school?
Banned, as far as I know, the ones that teaches pornographic books should be banned in school, yes.
A book that has daughters having sex with their dad, should that be banned in school?
Yes.
So a book that has two daughters getting their dad drunk, having sex with them, that book should be banned in schools?
No, the Bible should not be banned.
Oh, okay.
They're telling histories of what really happened.
That is a story in the Bible.
Yes, I know that is a story in the Bible.
You just said it should be banned.
No, the stories that are teaching them, go back to your biblical values, the 10 Commandments. No sex before marriage. You wouldn't need all these abortion clinics to kill babies if there was no sex before marriage.
But sex with a dad, that story, that's okay for kids?
It's not okay.
It's okay to teach that to kids, that story? It's okay to teach that kid because it's in the Bible, and the Bible should be taught in schools?
The Bible should be taught in schools, yes.
All right. There you have it. I would imagine, I don't know what the percentages of Americans that believe that to be true, but it's frighteningly high. Okay. Now, finally, we've got to end on a laugh because those last few clips are pretty distressing, fair to say. So here is Jimmy Kimmel making jokes about the VP debate over on ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live.
More than 43 million Americans, tuned in to watch the matchup between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance last night. Unlike the last debate, there was no clear winner. J.D. Vance managed to present himself as polite, polished, even had some jokes. Like when he said that Trump peacefully handed over power. That was hilarious. He also had the audacity to say that Trump saved Obamacare, which is so brazenly false. You might as well say Trump was our first black president. But maybe the most upsetting sentence that popped out of Vance's mouth was his idea to stop gun violence in schools. He said, we have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger, which is so infuriating. This is like Boeing saying, we know our planes have been having some mechanical problems, but we have a solution. Puffier life jackets. A stronger door isn't going to stop a school shooting. It isn't even going to stop your wife from walking in on you humping the Jennifer convertible catalog.
All right, there you go. That is your headlines and your news clips from the last 24 hours. Hopefully you appreciate it. Thank you very much for supporting me. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. To put together this news broadcast every day takes hours of work. I can't do it without your support. I'm so grateful to all of those of you who do and who joined me at last night's hangout. I bet you it was great, but I'm taping this just before we get started there. And my first guest, and coming up, I should say, very excited to introduce you to Kate Barr of Kate Barr Can't Win. She's running for Senate in North Carolina. That's coming up. Also, my conversation with Francis from the debate watch party on Tuesday night. I grabbed that audio. But right now I've got the great Moe Davis, who I have as much admiration and respect for as anybody I've ever known. He's a great man. Let me just say that. He's a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, attorney, educator, politician, former administrative law judge, and he was appointed the third chief prosecutor of Guantanamo Bay military commissions, where he served from 2005 to 2007. He resigned, though, from the position after he refused to use evidence obtained through torture and because of political influence and pressure in the prosecutions. And it was an amazing moment in time, and he wrote about it in a New York Times op-ed. And I have so much respect for his integrity on that very difficult decision that he made. It wasn't popular. It probably still isn't. And I just think he's the greatest. He also ran for Congress back in 2019. I think that might have been the last time I talked to him. But I keep in touch, and I follow him on social media, where he's always posting pictures from Asheville, which is beautiful, Asheville, North Carolina. I caught up with him. He only had cell phone service, and it was like roaming emergency service. But we had a good phone connection, and I think a great conversation. I was real happy to catch up with him. You're not going to want to miss the last question when I ask him about character and why it matters for leaders. Very few people have the type of character that he does, so I was happy to catch up with him. And let's do it right now with my old friend Moe Davis down there in Asheville, North Carolina. All right, I've got my friend Moe Davis now, and I'm so happy to hear your voice. You know, I love following you on Twitter. We don't speak very highly of social media, but one of the great things about following you is you often post photographs of sunsets and beautiful scenes from right there in Asheville, North Carolina, where you and your wife live. How are you doing?
Compared to a lot of folks, we're doing extraordinarily well. But today's day 7 with no electricity, no water, no internet, and no end in sight. So this area really got hit hard.
Talk to me about the North Carolina that you grew up in, and specifically the places that you know well that were hit hard, and whether or not they'd ever experienced anything like this.
Yeah, it's certainly not in my lifetime. There was the flood of 1916 was kind of historic, and everybody knew about it. But this one rivaled it, by a magnitude of at least 2. The mountains. A lot of people moved here. Asheville is become a popular destination, and there are a lot of folks that moved here to get away from the coast. In fact, my neighbors. I'm looking out my window. The house below me. My neighbors are from New Orleans, and they lived through Katrina. And I was talking to them earlier, and they said, we thought that after Katrina that was our once-in-a-lifetime experience. And then Helene comes through here. One of the problems is, in the mountains is all the water. We had a bunch of rain before Helene got here. And then Helene, depending on where you were, dumped another 2 feet of rain. And it all ran downhill and into the rivers. And just massive, massive flooding. Pete, I don't know if you've ever been to Asheville, but the French Broad River runs through town, and there used to be the River Arts District. It was kind of Asheville's motto is keep Asheville weird, and certainly the River Art District was art studios and breweries and restaurants. In fact, when the Obamas come to Asheville, they always went to 12 Bones down in the River Arts District, but that whole area just got wiped out. And
when you say,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, when you say wiped out, I did visit Asheville just, I think, one time, and it's a beautiful place. I know a lot of people, like you said, have been moving there over the past several years and made it an even more beautiful place, one might argue. But tell me about, what do you mean by wiped out? Like all the businesses, streets worth of businesses?
Yeah, just massive flooding. Anything that was near water flooded. So the River Arts District, we rode through there the day after, and you could just see the tops of the roofs, and that was after the water had receded a bit. There's a community near here called Chimney Rock. It was a quaint little, in fact, the movie, if you ever saw Dirty Dancing, was filmed at Lake Lure, and Chimney Rock is right next to it, and just, little motels and shops. There's a great brewery there with a deck out over the water. And there's nothing left there. I mean, it all got swept down the river. So, this area's really gotten hit hard. I just checked. There was a 4:00 briefing. The sheriff reported that as of 4:00 today, we've had 71 confirmed deaths from the hurricane. There's still a couple of hundred people that are unaccounted for. And like I said, we're fortunate. Our house, we had a massive oak tree that came down, but it missed our house. Wow. So we had no structural damage. We're lucky we have solar panels and a storage battery, so we can keep the lights on. Fortunately had a neighbor has a well, so we can get water from there. So we're one of the lucky ones. But a lot of folks around this area pretty much lost everything.
So, how prepared were folks? Were the authorities prepared for this? Were they unprepared for this? Local, state, and obviously now the federal. In terms of before the storm, are people upset that they weren't given notice, or was it just because of the way that it developed very quickly and the way that it happened? It was hard to predict, and there isn't blame to go around in terms of the preparation, Mo.
Sure. Yeah, I think. I tell you, it caught us by surprise. My wife and I knew it was going to be bad, but we never expected anything this severe. I know the local officials are, a little upset. I mean, this is not like a tornado that sneaks up on you. I mean, you could see this coming. And so they put in a request to the state a couple of days prior. It hit here last Friday. They put in a request in advance to try to pre-position supplies for when this happened. And for whatever reason, the state didn't comply. So I think the good news is, and over the last couple of days, there's been just an armada of trucks coming in, bringing food and water and bucket trucks. I was riding around today. They're I guess the furthest away I've seen was from New York State. But law enforcement, utility crews, Jose Andres has been here with World Kitchen. The outpouring of support has been incredible. But I'd say for those, the first 48 hours after, I think we could have done better in advance, having stuff pre-positioned that just wasn't there. But like I said, it's gotten better the last couple of days.
You know the mountains there, western North Carolina, well. You're talking about Asheville, mostly where you live. What about those folks out there? How do they live? How have they been affected? What have you heard?
Yeah, and again, Asheville, if you're not familiar with western North Carolina, Asheville is a city of about 100,000 people. But there are a lot of more remote locations where a lot of folks are cut off. I can tell you, like where I live right outside of Asheville, and we're kind of in would be considered an upscale development. For the first 2 days, we couldn't leave because the river flooded. So if you got down to the entrance to our development, if you went left or right, you could go about 100 yards, and then there was 10 feet of water. And there's still communities in the rural parts that are inaccessible. I heard today a spokesman for our State Department of Transportation, I think he said there were 550 roads in western North Carolina that are inaccessible. So, again, I think we're fortunate. We're close to Asheville, which is kind of the major hub. And, no doubt those folks out in those rural communities are suffering a lot greater than we are here.
Yeah, I mean, you're really lucky that you've got the solar panels and the battery and the neighbor with the well. So you got water and at least some electricity, right? But most people probably aren't that lucky, fair to say.
Yeah, and it's going to have a long-term impact. I don't know the number yet, but, Asheville is famous for, we had the highest number of breweries per capita of any city in America. And I would say the majority of those breweries are no longer operating. Wow. We were known as a food destination. We had great restaurants here. So a big service economy, a big tourism economy. So a lot of folks are, going to be out of work for a while. The big attraction, one of the big attractions here was the Biltmore Estate. The Vanderbilt's built. It's closed for at least the next couple of weeks. So this is going to have a long-term effect on this area. And no doubt we'll recover and we'll get through this, but there are going to be some difficult days ahead. President Biden was here yesterday, did a helicopter flyover to take a look at the damage. Kamala Harris is supposed to be coming in the next few days. And like I said, there's been, at least in the last couple of days, an outpouring of support. For a day or two, we kind of without water. And now I'm just looking. I think we have 5 cases of water sitting here in our kitchen from people that have dropped by and dropped off water.
You mentioned people there. I was going to ask you about the importance of community. You understand as well as anybody, and having served, so long in public service, obviously. But I mean, just as a member of your community, how is your community responding to each other? We think so about how divided we are. And, the hypothetical is, what if we needed each other? What if there were a calamity, a natural disaster, or, a terrorist attack or anything like that? How would we come together? And so how is the community coming together? Or are you guys divided over anything? Are people yelling at each other? Or are we looking for the helpers, Mo?
Yeah, I think, from what's been reported so far, there have been some very limited incidents of looting. But that's primarily been people trying to get access to things they're doing with. I mean, not people trying to enrich themselves, but people trying to get survival. I can tell you, from what I've observed, in the past week, I've seen people, like myself, I've got a chainsaw. The roads here were blocked by trees, and a group of us went out with our chainsaws and cleared a path so that when the water receded, like a lot of folks here, I don't know if you can hear in the background, there's kind of a rumble, and that's generators. A lot of folks out here have generators that run off of propane, and a lot of folks are beginning, the propane's beginning to get limited. So a bunch of us went out and we cleared the road so when the propane truck can get here, they can resupply. But in the time, over the past week, I have yet one time to hear anybody mention whether they're a Democrat or Republican.
Given that, that's great to hear. But given that, I do want to ask you the least important, but still important question. Obviously, you understand politics. You ran for office, and you understand the makeup of that area. So a lot of us are wondering how North Carolina, if this is any kind of October surprise, if this hurricane, this storm, and certainly whether it be the preparation of the state, much less the reaction of FEMA and the federal government. Do you think it affects anybody? I'm guessing that the Biden administration is reacting really. They understand the importance of right. optics, and obviously they want folks to vote for Democrats in North Carolina. Do you think this changes anything in any way?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to make a significant difference one way or the other. I think where it can make a difference in this area, if you're familiar with Western North Carolina, is cherry red, except for Asheville. Asheville is, I've referred to it as the Berkeley of the Blue Ridge. We're a blue dot in a sea of red, and those red communities, out away from here, got hit, as hard or harder than we did. Where it could have an impact is, a lot of the conservative voters like to turn out on election day and cast their ballot. And that's only a little over a month away. And for a lot of those folks, it may be hard, when it comes election day to get out and vote. So I think if there is an impact, it's probably a greater impact on the Republican side than on the Democratic side.
Anything that we can do, people listening can do to support folks in that area. I guess it's always, great to come visit and spend our money there if we ever get down in that area and try to help out. But is there anything else that folks can do?
Well, sure. There's, any number of opportunities to contribute. I think one of the, after my campaign was over, we had money left over. The biggest contribution we made out of that money was to an organization here called MANNA, MANNA. And it's a food bank that provides food throughout Western North Carolina to folks that are in need. And their warehouse and headquarters was located, unfortunately, right on the banks of the Shenandoah River.
Oh,
and got wiped out. I guess a bit of good news is that Jeff Bezos, I'm drawing a blank on his ex-wife. I can't think of her name off the top of my head.
I'll look it up. Go ahead.
She donated a couple of $1 million to MANA a while back to build a new facility, and they're working on that. It's not ready yet, but their existing facility that was kind of essential to getting food distributed in Western North Carolina just got swept away. So that's one good organization that I can tell you from personal experience that every dollar you contribute will be $1 of good that's done here in Western North Carolina. And
much
certainly
appreciated.
when we get through this, come back and visit. We need you back here.
Well, I mean, every time I see you posting pictures of the sunsets there in Asheville, I think that must be one of the most beautiful places in the world. I always think, I wish I was closer with Mo, but I think I'm close enough. I'll invite myself down.
Yeah, come on down anytime. We got to get through this, but once we do, there's no place prettier than Western North Carolina.
I'll bring a chainsaw. Last thing I wanted to ask you while I got you, and talking to you today reminds me about how much I admire you and enjoy talking with you, Mo, and I appreciate you doing this. But I thought of just one other question that I wanted to specifically ask you, because I've always admired you for being so principled and having such integrity in all walks of life. And I hold you up as a man with great character. And so I wanted to ask you, why do you think character matters in public office? I know you think it matters, but I ask this question because there's so many folks that I argue with that are Trump supporters that talk about, they support him because of what he's going to do for them in terms of whatever they think. But I always ask them, what about character? And often people say, that doesn't matter to me. So I wanted to ask you, Moe Davis, why is character important for any leader, much less president of the United States? How would you define that? How would you word that?
Well, to me, that's the highest priority. I mean, to me, character is people that will do the right thing, whether anybody's looking or not. And people that you can count on. Not looking at what they can do to make things better for themselves, but to make things better for their community. And I think for most Americans, character does matter. And we've seen it here locally. If you followed our governor's race, we've got a great Democratic candidate in Josh Stein, and his opponent is Mark Robinson, who is one of the most, by comparison, Trump probably looks pretty good compared to Mark Robinson. And you've seen a number of, the Republican Governors Association, a number of local Republican office holders that have said enough's enough. So there's a line there that at some point, it just goes too far. So I'm pleased to see that Mark Robinson is likely to go down in a substantial defeat because of his character or lack thereof. So
right.
I think it does matter.
I love the way that you said that. Absolutely perfect. I'll let you go. I'll check in on you in a few days. I'll share this with everybody. I can't thank you enough. I'm so grateful for your time today. Best of luck. Hey,
thanks, Pete. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, there he goes. Moe Davis. Wasn't he great? Go say hi to him on Twitter at COL Moe Davis. Colonel Moe Davis, COL Moe Davis. And check him out at moedavis.com. He's written a new book. And it's historical fiction. It's really interesting. He's very interesting. I absolutely love the guy, and I hope that you'll say hi to him and thank him for joining us here on the show. And now I want to get to Kate Barr, and thank you very much to Jim Babowski, who put us together. And I talked with her last week before the hurricane hit North Carolina. But her website is katebarrcantwin.com, where District 37 is the Senate district she's running in. It's so gerrymandered, she doesn't have a chance. But we deserve to have two names on the ballot. And she says, if I'm going to lose, we might as well have a little fun, raise a little hell, and shine a light on the impacts of gerrymandering along the way. Go to katebarrcantwin.com to support her as well on social media. All of that is in the show notes to connect with Kate. Really happy that we got to have her on the show. A great conversation. Let's do it right now. All right, there she is, Kate Barr, doing the impossible or not. Either way, really important. So glad to have you joining me. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, where did you get interested in politics before we get deep into the campaign here and why it matters so much? Like, when did you start getting engaged? Were you always someone who was interested in these issues? Were you in Model UN?
I was not in Model UN. I was a big math nerd. We stuck to our slide rules way back in the day. My mom actually is how I got into politics. She has been engaged since before I was born. She integrated the high school system in the town I grew up in Durham, North Carolina. So she's been there talking about it since I was born.
It sounds like I should be interviewing her.
Yeah, you should. That's 100% true.
Honestly, when I think about that, I often go back to the fact that what we're living through now with book bans and not wanting to teach history and all these new human and civil rights issues that seem prehistoric. I thought we were past this. How is this happening again? Your mom must have a pretty interesting point of view on that. Do you know what does she think about that question? Have you ever crossed that?
Yeah. The real question is, am I allowed to swear on this podcast? Is that something that we do?
This is a Christian.
I see. In that case, she would say it is bull hockey.
Does she swear?
Yeah, and then says, pardon my French afterwards.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. I would love to hear more about her point of view, but let's talk more about your campaign here. I've talked a little bit here in the intro about gerrymandering in the situation in North Carolina. You told us when you got into politics, when did you understand how the system was it can be rigged for one party or the other through this process, but in North Carolina, certainly for Republicans. When did you first hear about that in your district?
First of all, I should say gerrymandering is wrong no matter which party is doing it. The Democrats did it for a long time in North Carolina. Now the Republicans are doing the same thing, just different party. Our maps actually got redrawn in October of 2023. So up until October, I was in a blue district. I had a sitting state senator named Natasha Marcus, who I really liked and was thrilled to vote for. She was too loud and too female for the Republican Party. So when they drew the new maps in 2023, they drew a special district just around her neighborhood and mine to keep her from staying in the state Senate. And it frankly pissed me off. So here we are.
Just explain a little bit more about how that changes the dynamic, the culture of your community and your neighborhood. People don't see or feel this invisible line in their neighborhood until they do. And then I'm guessing, are there problems?
Problems? Never. No, the reality of gerrymandering is it seems like this high level academic sounding problem, but it shows up in our everyday lives all over the place. Basically, gerrymandering means that our representatives don't represent us. So instead of voters choosing their representatives, choose their voters. And that also means they don't have to listen to us. So we see all kinds of policies being passed that aren't in alignment with the people of North Carolina.
And that's key. They don't listen to you and they don't come to your house. They don't campaign. You're taking this seriously. You're running this like a serious campaign. You're knocking on doors. You're doing everything that needs to be done, even though you know you cannot win. Is it still true since you launched and made your original video, which I've played for listeners? Can you still not win, Kate?
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot win. The numbers don't lie. Like the way that they have drawn the lines, and they have sophisticated statistical models to make sure that I cannot win. Even though I get to come on your podcast and talk about it, I will send my regards to our new state senator on election night.
So what are you learning when you're campaigning? You're knocking on doors. You're talking to people. You've got a platform. How is that going in a district that is gerrymandered? What do people say when they learn about your campaign? Knocking on the door, trying to get your vote, even though I can't win?
Yeah. And shockingly, people are like, yeah, I'll vote for you, because no one's ever shown up for them before because they haven't had to. So folks haven't had a state senator, even a candidate, show up on their doorstep and talk to them about what they cared about and ask for their vote. Because when your seat is guaranteed, you don't have to do that kind of work.
Exactly. And so the other candidate is a shoo-in. That's just the way it's going to be. And how do you change it? Like, you're bringing attention to this and creating awareness, but the system, the lines need to be redrawn and the system needs to be changed. And there needs to be laws against gerrymandering, partisan gerrymandering. And we've talked a lot about that here on the show with David Daly and so many other experts. But what has to happen in North Carolina? You have to wait until the next census?
Thankfully, no. But unlike other states, we can't put like a citizens ballot initiative up for voting. We have to do this through our judicial system. So I'm going to take you in my time machine back to 2022 when our state Supreme Court heard a case about partisan gerrymandering, declared partisan gerrymandering unconstitutional. We got fair maps. We sent 7 Republicans and 7 Democrats to the U.S. Congress, which represents North Carolina as a 50-50 state. A few months later, that court had flipped. We had 2 Democrats, 5 Republicans on it. They chose in unprecedented fashion to rehear the partisan gerrymandering case, declared that North Carolinians do not have a right to fair elections, and said that partisan gerrymandering was constitutional. And that's how we got the maps we have now. So our path to fair maps is through the judiciary. We need to keep Allison Riggs on the bench this year. 2026, we keep Anita Earls on the bench. And then in 2028, we can flip the court and they will rehear that case again and hopefully correctly interpret our state constitution.
Your focus is on the state Supreme Court of North Carolina.
That's right.
Your whole focus is on that, winning back that. Those are elected seats.
That is the path forward for us.
Wow. Okay. And
no pressure in North Carolina.
Man, wow. All right. That's exciting to know that you have something to focus on or that there's a solution. I thought you had to wait for a longer period of time. Okay. So the way forward there, I got to ask you, though, about North Carolina politics.
Yeah, sure.
It's a swing state. What is it like there in terms of the conversation, the culture, the campaign ads, the visits from the candidates? It is a really important state, obviously. Tell me what you think is the temperature.
Yeah, and I live in Mecklenburg County, which is like one of the most important counties, I think, in the country for this cycle.
Wow.
Just because of how many folks here could show up and vote and then don't. And as a result, we miss an opportunity to elect Democrats. Anyway, it's been busy. We have politicians rolling through the state. Vice President is here. Tim Walz is here. Gwen Walz is here. Doug Emhoff is here. It's like once a week. And that's pretty cool because it's awesome to feel like your vote matters and like you are a part of the national conversation. It's also a little overwhelming and I think sometimes causes folks to tune out. We are being inundated with political ads right now.
So the elephant in the conversation with anybody talking about North Carolina politics is the Republican nominee for governor, Mark Robinson.
Yes.
Before we found out these latest revelations, it was shocking that he became the nominee. And it's often one of these situations where it's a winnable seat for Republicans, but they end up nominating because of these extreme right-wing primaries, those voters that vote. They end up nominating Magneto and cartoon villains that actually can't win, even in a state they normally could if you had a, quote, normal Republican, even in these times. So what about before these latest revelations, this CNN scoop, did you think of him? And do you ever talk to Republicans? They're like, yeah, I can support that guy.
Mark Robinson has been unfit for the entirety of his time as lieutenant governor. Right. The latest revelations are back before he was lieutenant governor. So I kind of wonder where those chats were when he was running the first time. But whatever. Most people I know who are Republican really don't want to vote for him. They recognize that he's pretty atrocious and they're disappointed in their party for choosing him. And also, we vote by D's and R's. That's part of the problem. That's why gerrymandering works, for example, because we say, it's in service of some larger message. We have to make sure that abortion is banned in our state. So I will vote for this truly horrible person instead of voting my values, choosing someone who represents my values because I have this one concern. And that concern often is abortion.
Interesting. You hear that yourself all the time. And you hear people say, you hear women say, even in cases of rape and incest, I would not allow for there to be an abortion. Do they not understand that could potentially be the case, or do they actually openly say that?
I don't hear women saying that. Every woman I know, Republican or otherwise, believes there should be exceptions.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. What about your white woman? What about white women in North Carolina? How is your outreach going with them? What arguments or points might convince them? What are they thinking about then?
Where I live, the white women understand the assignment, and we are out doing the work that we should have done in 2016 but failed to do. So I really hope to see a better result there this go round. It's not uncommon for me to be knocking doors, and the person I'm supposed to be talking to in the house is the female member of the house, and the man comes to the door and shuts the door in my face. That's the kind of thing that'll happen. But for some reason, the wife popped up on our scores as being persuadable, even though her husband was not. And so I just come back, try again another day.
There's a lot of marriages that one person is a lot more passionate about politics, and I'm just going to say often it's the man, and if it's the man, the woman just, listen, I don't agree with his opinion, but I'm not rocking this boat, this marriage over that. And I hate that sounds so sexist, but those are the gender, I think, opinions that it often falls under. If the woman's more passionate than the man, maybe that happens, but obviously it does. But why do you care so much type of conversation in a marriage? But I think that happens a lot. So if the woman did answer, she might be interested in engaging you and hearing from you and being persuadable. Is that what you're saying, maybe?
Yeah, at least that's what our data suggests, is that there might be someone in that household who's interested in hearing what we have to say. And I'll say my relationship is one where it's flip-flopped, where I am far more politically engaged than my husband is. He cares, and I don't think he's persuadable to the Republican side. That would be an interesting family dinner conversation to have if I discovered that. But he views his role as holding down the home front. He's the best trad husband you will ever see. He can bake a mean sourdough. I go out and lose this race with all the intensity I possibly can. That's awesome. Clearly, he signed up for it as well. And this publicity stunt, apparently, that you're taking it very seriously, understands what that means for your family. And I think that's part of the issue here as well, is that if you do put your name down on the ballot, even in this kind of campaign that you're running, you're still it's still scary. There can be threats. There can be all kinds of issues and actual damage done to your family and its reputation. And I've seen that happen to me. And I wonder if that's happened to you, or even though you don't pose maybe the threat, are people still threatening you or your family at all in your district? We haven't gotten any serious threats. I've learned to stay out of the comment section on any sort of social media that exists. I've had a few sugar daddy offers, which, what does your husband think about those? Does he look at the offer and consider, what do you have to do? How much is it? I did show one of them to him, and he said, write back and ask if they will pay for our children's summer camp. But basically what he's saying is we are open to negotiation. And that's the kind of open-minded couple that I think we need to. Some guy wants to. I could just keep going to this. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. There's some wild stuff out there for sure. But also I feel like this moment demands of us that we take as big a step out as we possibly can. Yeah. This is a really unique thing you're doing. And so given that this is the thing that you're capable of and stepped up for, what would you say to other people who want to do similar things to affect gerrymander or anything else? Because I've always said, I think progressives, Democrats, liberals need to do more, be more creative and be more thoughtful about how they raise attention and awareness to a campaign. That's why I've always done the media that I do the way I do it, because I want to fight apathy. I want to keep it interesting and teach people things about issues that actually impact their lives a great deal. So what's your advice to anybody else who wants to do something similar? Yeah, look, the truth is that we expect our politics to come in an entertaining fashion these days. That's just the norm. You want it to be something that's engaging, right? And so deliver your message in the way that you would want to receive it. If you are somebody who is all over TikTok, then get on TikTok and tell TikTok what you think. If TikTok isn't your thing, go to whatever space, real life or internet, that you exist in, and use that space to be your authentic self and share that message. I think we're all over politicians using politispeak to skirt around issues. It's really inspiring what you're doing. So many women have stepped forward since, I think, 2016. I remember covering the Women's March, and I really don't feel like anything has changed since that moment, and especially since the Supreme Court
overturn women's reproductive rights. And my final question really is, now that a woman has stepped up and is the nominee, describe the change in energy in North Carolina, in your community, in your circle and friends, when President Biden did the courageous thing to step down and Kamala Harris did the equally courageous thing to step up. And describe how that's changed anything in your world, what you've seen.
Oh, man, it's just the energy people have to do what is often thankless work, like knocking doors. The number one thing people can do right now is text their friends and make sure their friends are going to vote and know who they're going to vote for. And people are willing to do that in a different way than they were when it was Joe Biden. He gave us the greatest gift. Like, talk about legacy. That's an amazing choice to make. And I think we will look back on his years with a lot of respect. And I cannot wait to cast my vote for Kamala Harris.
Love talking to you and love what you're doing. I think it's super important, and we're all supporting you. We'll see what's next, whatever you do. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
All right, there she goes, Kate Barr, can'twin.com. Follow her on social media. Let her know you heard her here on the show. Kate Barr, can'twin@gmail.com is her email as well. And all that should be in the show notes for today's show. Like every day's show, I hope you're reading those and contacting the guests and thanking them for joining on our podcast. It really does matter a lot. Go support her in North Carolina any way that you can. And hopefully we'll get her on a hangout as well in the next couple of weeks. All right. Now, finally, I wanted to share my conversation with Frances from Tuesday night before the vice presidential debate. We were hanging out for about half an hour, and Frances, one of the most beloved members of the stand-up community. She's been with us for a very long time. She's also a member of the Hue. We got to get the Hue back together. And she talked about what happened and what it was like. And she's always real and always funny and always great. And you can contact her. I'll put her contacts and social media stuff in the show notes as well. I hope you like this. We always love Frances. And I see Frances there. And a lot of people have been inquiring about your well-being because you live in Asheville, North Carolina. And I was going to reach out and tape something with you for the wider audience to know and just get some reporting in your own experience. But would you mind telling us how you're doing and how things are, or whatever, anything you want to share?
I don't know how loud it is because my brother is watching a Vince McMahon documentary right now.
It's on Netflix. It's good. We can hear you though, as long as you.
I don't know if y'all can hear it.
I can hear you.
Yeah, it is. This has been one of the craziest experiences of my life. For the past couple of days, I've been walking around as though I've been hungover, as though I've been in a fog. I still can't comprehend the amount of devastation that's happened in Asheville. I was supposed to I started out earlier last week in Tampa Bay, and they were talking about this storm coming through, and I was flying out right before the storm hit Tampa Bay. And I was like, oh, that's great. Then you land and you find out, oh, it's supposed to hit Asheville. Okay, we're going to get a little bit of rain, nothing major. But I've been following this meteorologist based out of Charlotte for years now, and he is my guru. He has not been wrong. He's very communicative and all that. And he was like, this is going to be catastrophic. This is going to be big. Do not play around with this. Make sure that you're ready for people to lose electricity. Trees will come down. It's going to be major. So I was supposed to fly to Jersey City on Wednesday, and I was at the airport on Wednesday, and I left and came back home because I was like, oh, well, I want to be around my house. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I feel like I should be home because I don't want to get trapped in Jersey City. Beautiful, smart. No, that's not what you do. This is what you think of when people are so dumb, where you're like, why would you go back home? You're supposed to evacuate. And instead, I came back to Asheville. So then I'm in Asheville and the storm comes through. But before that, we had that low pressure system where we lose electricity early. They got that back on, but we didn't have cellular or anything like that. We didn't have internet. And then, just once everything happened. So it's just tons of flooding. Trees are falling down all around my house. I'm looking at trees, praying that they don't fall. When I come back and look, instead of the tree falling towards my house, it fell in my neighbor's yard. And I was like, thank you, Jesus. So everything was they were just little bits of blessings that I saw, but because we didn't have cellular, you have no idea what was happening around us. And then when I finally got cellular back on Saturday night at 10:30, it's just ping after ping after ping. People were worried. My family had been trying to get in contact with me. My mom became a sleuth, and she somehow found my neighbor's number, and she contacted her. And that was bizarre because my mom I love her, but she's not the most technological person. But when she's like, my baby is missing, she figured it out. But as the days have been going on, as I've been back online, I'm just finding that everything that I loved, all of my haunts in Asheville are gone. They're completely destroyed or they were washed out. So any of their inventory is just gone. People are missing still that work at these places. It's unbelievable.
Well,
and yeah,
I appreciate
so now I'm in Charlotte.
You sharing all that. You're with your brother in Charlotte. You're safe, and that's most important. You're with him, and there's so many others affected by this. And I want to talk with you more about it. I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think I like to think that one of the things about this community is that we could be there for each other in these kinds of natural disaster things, meaning you got to get out. There's somebody that can put you up here. And I was thinking about saying this on the podcast too. I should, and will have unfortunately plenty of opportunities as the climate crisis gets worse. You're going to need places to go. I read today, North Carolina, specifically Asheville, is supposed to be climate proof. Obviously nowhere is, but it's supposed to be in the sweet spot in terms of climate where climate change won't affect it so negatively. Obviously we now know that that's not true of anywhere. So no matter where you are or think you're safe, you might have to evacuate, and hopefully they can rebuild and hopefully we can adapt. But one of the things about hopefully this community is as the climate crisis, I mean, God forbid anybody lost their house in a fire or something. Well, you folks could just stay with Cassie. If you lose your house in a fire, you can move in with Cassie for at least a week. I've just volunteered.
Does it feel like fire down there though? Like, I feel like it's just naturally like being in an oven.
In Vegas, yes.
In Vegas,
good point.
So
if you do lose your house in a fire, you don't want to move to a place that
you don't want to go there
on fire. That's a good. Anyway,
Therese was very sweet. I was like, just make me some food. I would have loved to have been hanging out with her and having all that wonderful stuff she makes.
Plenty of guest rooms for folks if ever is the concern. If you're alone, that's why I always like to say at the beginning, I think that's how we kind of figured ourselves out during the pandemic. You're not alone if you're like a member of this community. We're here for you, except for Kevin Richburg. Nothing we can do for him. Really nothing. What are we supposed to do? What's he going to do?
He's not staying in my house, that's for sure.
Yeah, you don't want him over there.
No.
The devil will hold me in his bosom.
What the fuck? All right, just a little bit of shenanigans there at the end. We always have fun at our hangouts, and that is Frances. Thank you, Frances. Glad that you're okay, and thank you to Therese for being so generous to her as well. So many of you have connected. Shout out to Nick Martino, Dr. Barry Hummel, and Amanda Brooks, 3 stand-up members who are running together in a race in Kentucky right now. And I think our friend Scott Bennett is going to catch up with them as well. All 4 of you guys being connected and doing that together is just great. I love it. Warms my heart. Have a great time. Good luck. That's all I've got for you on today's show. I think I'll be back with Christian Finnegan or somebody tomorrow. Hopefully Christian will be able to join me, and we'll do a wrap-up of the week. I can't do this show without your support, so sign up now for a paid subscription, patreon.com. You can always pay more than $5 if you want. That's the minimum. Get access to our community, the Discord platform, and each other, and so much more. You're never alone if you're a member of the stand-up community, like our great friend John Carroll is. He sings and writes and all the music on this show, and we're so grateful for it. Johnny, take us out right now.
You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. All you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, down off of your fence, even if it ain't a very friendly audience. Well, there'll be what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up. Stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest